The next place is Isaiah 29, where it talks about how the book will be delivered to someone who cannot read. So Muslims are like boasting that the prophet is illiterate. One reason why Muhammad for sure is not the prophet to come is because we have a description. What signs and wonders and miracles did Muhammad do? Nothing. The only miracle that's attested to him is making the Quran when he was illiterate. That's it. The Father sends an advocate. This is Muhammad. He has the spirit of truth. Everywhere Muslims use to try to justify his prophethood, his mentioning in the Old Testament is false. The only one that might do it is in today's video, we're going to talk about, is Muhammad in the Bible? Now, there's a lot of Muslims who claim that he is, and we're going to go through all the passages that they use to claim that he is. All the passages Muslims use is just completely false, just made up. Most of it is silly nonsense. There is, however, a prophecy about Muhammad in the Bible, which I think does apply to him. It's never used by Muslims because it makes Muhammad look like an evil person. So we're going to go through that today as well. And in the first bit of evidence that they use is Deuteronomy 18. So they say the prophet that is like Moses is Muhammad because it's among your fellow Israelites, but they say that this term in Hebrew, it means brethren, but they use it in like it's your other brothers, and because the Israelites have a brother nation with the Ishmaelites, never mind the other 5 children or 6 children of Abraham, they don't mention any of them. They say, oh, it's specifically Ishmael. Even though there's 6 other kids of Abraham, they still use this argument, which doesn't make any sense because in Deuteronomy 17, literally right before this, so here is where they use, right up here, it's the exact same term, but it's used for the Israelite king. So be sure to appoint over you a king the Lord your God chooses. He must be from among your fellow Israelites. This is the exact same Hebrew phrase. Do not place a foreigner over you, one who is not an Israelite. So this is about as clear as you can possibly get. From among your fellow Israelites, which in the Hebrew, this exact phrase is the exact phrase we have here. Now the wording's a little bit different, but this achi karib is exactly the same as the Deuteronomy 17 passage. You have achi karib. So this is the same words being applied, so this can't possibly mean a different lineage. This has to be an Israelite that the prophet will come through. It cannot be an Ishmaelite. So Muhammad automatically doesn't fulfill this role, and we have a place where the Christians understand who this prophet is, talking about the Messiah. The Messiah was sent by God, who was appointed for you, Jesus. Heaven must receive him until the time comes for God to restore everything, as he promised long ago through his holy prophets. For Moses said, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own people. You must listen to everything that he tells you. So Christians in the New Testament apply the prophet to Jesus and the Messiah to Jesus. There's a common Muslim argument that, the Jews in like John differentiate between the Messiah, Elijah, and the prophet. Well, Christians think Jesus is both, and he definitely fulfills both. One reason why Muhammad for sure is not the prophet to come is because we have a description of what the prophet like Moses is going to be. Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Okay, that's one aspect of it, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and all his officials and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deed that Moses did in the sight of all of Israel. So the one who will be like Moses will know God face to face. Muhammad never met Allah. He never knew, because in Surah 20, we have Moses meeting Allah in the burning bush. Yet Muhammad never knew him. He only knew Gabriel, which is a demon. And Moses did all these signs and wonders and miracles. What signs and wonders and miracles did Muhammad do? Nothing. The only miracle that's attested to him is making the Quran when he was illiterate. That's it. He split the moon. No, he didn't. There is no sign and wonder attributed to Muhammad in the Quran at all, other than creating the Quran, which is a really terrible miracle, because the Quran is the worst book ever written. So we have no reason whatsoever to suggest that an Arabian prophet would come, and we have no reason to suggest that Muhammad fulfilled it because he didn't know God face to face and he didn't perform miracles. So the next passage that they try to use is Isaiah 42, where they claim, the prophet is going to come from Kedar. And this is in verse 13. Let the wilderness and its towns raise their voices. Let the settlement where Kedar lives rejoice. So we have this Kedar. Well, Kedar is the place where the Arabian tribe went. So this is speaking of the Arabian people. The issue with this is all throughout the servant songs of Isaiah, we have God speaking about different nations. It talks about Egypt and Cush and Moab as well. So are you going to say, oh, there's prophets that'll come from those areas as well? No, it doesn't make any sense. And the servant in Isaiah 52 or 42 through 53 is either the Messiah or Israel as a collective nation. It's never just the prophet. The prophet is not prophesied in Isaiah through the servant songs. So this just doesn't work. The next place is Isaiah 29, where it talks about how the book will be delivered to someone who cannot read and say, read this, please. They will answer, I do not know how to read. So Muslims are like boasting that the prophet is illiterate. And this is not the context. So with the context, God is being amazed by the blindness of them, by the drunkfulness of them. Was Muhammad drunk? Was Muhammad blind? No, this is it is a metaphor for how even though he's going to give them the scroll with the word sealed, if he gives it to them, they'll be able to read it, but they won't be able to comprehend it. They're drunk, yet not from wine. They stagger, yet not from beer. They're blind, yet they're going to be able to see. So they are not able to read, not because they're illiterate like Muhammad, but because they don't understand the text. They are spiritually darkened like Muhammad. And the next place is Song of Solomon, where this in Hebrew, altogether lovely, is Makmadim. Now, Makmadim kind of sounds like Muhammad in Hebrew, because Muhammad is another way of saying it's basically Ahmed, but Ahmed and Muhammad they're kind of like Yahushua and Yeshua for Joshua and Jesus. They are similar enough names that you would consider them to be the same name, or like Jacob and James. So this doesn't work because he is altogether lovely. The root word of this is Hamed. Hamed does not allow for Mahmed or Makmadim. Hamed is what I believe lovely or attractive, because Ifa is like beautiful for a man. This is lovely as in you enjoy their presence. Could be wrong on that. I think that's what it is. Either way, for sure, it doesn't mean Muhammad. And this is talking about the bride and the groom. So this is in the middle of a love poem talking about each other's beauty. So if you want to use this, you are saying that the future prophet is altogether desirable, even though Muhammad was fat and ugly. This doesn't make sense to apply to a future prophet. It doesn't make any sense. Adding the yod and the meme at the end makes it more into like a plural or an intensive form, meaning it is entirely lovely. It is so unlovely that it is encompassing everything, which is why it's translated as altogether lovely. Is this multiple prophets for it to be in the plural? No. That doesn't make any sense. Plus, you can't just use homophones between languages. I forgot what the actual term for it is, but words that are exactly the same pronunciation between languages but different meanings. You can't do that because once you start doing that, you open up a lot of rabbit holes. Like the word Hamas means violence in Hebrew. Now, I think that might actually have some like prophetic nature because it talks about how the men of violence live in the ground, in the dark and like tunnels. Like they're basically described as rats. And Hamas is filled with rats who dwell in tunnels. If you start adding all these different things to the text by using homophones between languages, you just run into all these problems that once you start opening up that can of worms, you're not going to like it as a Muslim. So don't do it. It doesn't make any sense to do it. The next argument that they use is that the Father sends an advocate, the Paraclete, the Comforter. Muslims think that this is Muhammad, that he is the advocate, that he has the spirit of truth. Now, this is incredibly wrong because if you just keep reading, Jesus defines who the advocate is. So, but the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and remind you everything I've said to you. So the advocate that Jesus is sending is the Holy Spirit. It can't be Muhammad. The text defines who it is. It's not Muhammad, and it's fulfilled in Acts 2 whenever the Holy Spirit comes. So that doesn't make any sense. The next place that Muslims gotta use is Habakkuk 3, where the Holy One from Mount Paran. Paran is where Ishmael went to dwell. So this refers to the Sinai wilderness where the Arabian people went to live. This doesn't make any sense as it's in the past tense. So whenever we're talking about this thing, it's talking about how God did these things, past tense. It's not a future tense. You couldn't use this literary style to establish a future prophecy, because everything in this section is in past tense. It's already happened. It's just recounting events that have already transpired. You can't apply it to the prophet. In the same way, Psalm 84 is used as a pilgrimage to the valley of Baka, and then they try to say that this pilgrimage is Mecca, because Baka and Mecca in Arabic sounds similar. Well, again, this is the same thing as Makmadim. Just because it sounds similar doesn't mean it is similar. It doesn't mean it is the same. Baka in Japanese means idiot, and then in Hebrew it means weeping. So this is the valley of weeping, or it's the valley of idiots. So if you want to say, oh, the pilgrimage to the valley of Baka is the Hajj, then I can say, oh, well, it's the valley of idiots, using your same logic. Like, oh no, but it's Hebrew, and well, it doesn't matter what language it is, even if they're sister languages, they have different meanings. So either you're okay with all languages that have that word, and you can take their meanings, or you're okay with none of them. You can't pick and choose. That's cherry picking. It's a fallacy. So if you want to run with this, I'm going to start calling it the Valley of Idiots, using Japanese. The number one place where Muhammad is actually in the Bible is in Genesis 16. So the angel of the Lord said to her, "You are now pregnant." This is talking to Hagar. "You will name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. He will live in hostility towards all his brothers." So the wild donkey, this is essentially the same thing as like a zebra, because it's they're not the same species, but they have the same temperament. So whenever you think about a zebra, they're violent for no reason. They choose violence. They go out of their way to choose violence. They're also kind of stupid. So whenever we think of, oh, who could this prophecy be about from the line of Ishmael, the most obvious example of who the wild donkey of a man is, who is hostile to everyone, is Muhammad. Muhammad's legacy is a legacy of violence and death, a violence of aggression for no reason, and a violence against Jews because he hated them and because they made fun of him. They hurt his feelings. He became wild and he hunted them down and beheaded many of them, hundreds of them. He died to a Jewish woman as well. So out of everyone in history, I think Muhammad fits this description the best. Not only is he from the line of Ishmael, he is a wild donkey, he's stupid, he's illiterate, and he was against everyone. He killed his own tribemen. He killed Jews. He killed the Qurayshi tribe. So we have all these places where throughout, if you read all the Islamic sources, everywhere Muhammad went, violence followed. He lived in hostility towards all his brothers. So both his literal blood, other Arabians, he persecuted and killed. He went to war with them. And then Jews, the brother tribe of Ishmaelites, he persecuted and killed. And then Christians, who are the adopted family, he persecuted and killed as well. So this passage is, in my opinion, a prophecy of Muhammad in the Bible, but it prophesies his bloody, tyrannical tirade in this world. Not exactly a positive outlook, and it doesn't call him a prophet, because he wasn't one. Not only does this perfectly fit Muhammad, it doesn't fit Ishmael. So whenever Abraham died, he was buried together by Isaac and Ishmael with his wife in the cave of Mamre. So we have both of them coming together to bury their father, and then they choose to settle next to each other. Now, it wasn't directly right next to each other, but where he settled in Be'er Roy, this area is in the plains next to Paran. So we have Isaac and Ishmael settling near each other, living in peace. And then later generations had hostility, but Ishmael and Isaac didn't fulfill this at all. So Ishmael was not this person from anywhere in the text. He was faithful to his dad for the first 13 years. He was faithfully left. He gained inheritance. There was peace between him and his father. There was peace between him and his brother. This doesn't fit Ishmael. Now you can say, oh, the descendants of Ishmael lived in hostility towards the tribes related to them. So this could be the fulfillment of Genesis 16. I think this is only a partial fulfillment, because yes, the Arabian people have always been warmongers. They've always been at war. They've always hated everyone around them, and they hated themselves. But it's not quite perfect. There's still some aspects of it missing. And I think Genesis 16 applies better to Muhammad. So you can say it's a partial fulfillment here, or you can even say it's a total fulfillment here. I think it also applies to Muhammad. And Islam is the second biggest religion in the world. It would be weird if the Bible never talks about it, never prophesies it, never makes any reference to it. I think it might make reference to it as the end times religion, the false religion. That's a different video. It can also make reference to it in Genesis 16. So we know that Muhammad is a false prophet. He made many false prophecies. I can bring up one right now. Allah's messenger said, "The hour will not be established till the buttocks of the women of the tribe of Deut jiggle while going around the Deut al-Kasa." Deut al-Kasa, butcher that pronunciation, was the idol of the Dervish tribe, which they used to worship in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance. So this is from Al-Bukhari. This is Sahih. Yet Muslims destroyed this idol and this tribe. This city literally doesn't exist anymore. Muslims killed them. So this is a prophecy that can't possibly be fulfilled. It's kind of like Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith made a prophecy about going on a mission trip with one of his friends. His friend died before that happened. So it's just a verified false prophecy. In the same way, Muhammad has a bunch of verified false prophecies that can't possibly happen. This is one of them. So we know that Muhammad is a false prophet, and we do have verses about a false prophet in the New Testament. My favorite of those passages is 2 Peter. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, such as Jesus was never crucified, Jesus isn't God, the Trinity is not real, Mary worship, all these destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them. This is denying Jesus, bringing swift destruction on themselves. Many will follow their depraved conduct. So this is, there's 1 billion Muslims, and will bring the way of truth into disrepute. Man, the behavior of Muslims has been awful throughout history. And their greed, Muhammad once tortured a man for money, then raped his wife. These teachers will exploit you, this is Dawa guys, with fabricated stories. Most of the Quran is made up stories based on Gnostic sources. Their condemnation has long been hanging over them, and their destruction has not been sleeping. There is a lot of depraved conduct of lawlessness, which is also, there's a lot of depraved conduct and lawlessness within Muhammad's life. He perfectly matches the false teacher and false prophet of 2 Peter, and he makes all these false prophecies. Well, one of the tests of the false prophet was given to us by God in the same passage that they try to use to quote about the future prophet coming, the one onto Moses. "A prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, is to be put to death." Muhammad spoke in the name of other gods with the demonic verses. He repented. Doesn't matter. He did it once. He should be put to death. How can we know if a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not come true, that is the message the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken presumptuously. Do not be alarmed. Muhammad made a bunch of false prophecies. He's obviously a false prophet. He succeeds in the test of the false prophet. He fails in the test of a true prophet because he made all these proclamations that didn't come true, and he spoke in the name of other gods. Everywhere Muslims use to try to justify his prophethood, his mentioning in the Old Testament, is false. The only one that might do it is Genesis 16, but this also disproves Islam because the angel of the Lord who appeared to him is called God. So we have in the same passage that maybe prophesies Muhammad, God physically appears in the earth. So all the Muslims are like, oh, God can't come to earth. That's a contradiction. He can't become a man. The angel of the Lord is described as a man, and he's described as God, and he's appearing before Hagar and declaring this prophecy about Muhammad. So either Islam is false or Islam is false. Either Muhammad's not in the Bible or he is in the Bible, but he is called a wild donkey of a man. Take your pick.